I am 99.99999% certain that I have either a completely dead Hara or a very blocked up, closed Hara, because I have none of the feelings that you were talking about the other day. None of them, ever. For as long as I can remember.
Where would you like to start with that?
Where do I start with it? That's kind of the question. Where do I start with starting to sort that out?
Yeah, and you will not be alone. You certainly won't be the only one. Working on your Hara is definitely an incredibly powerful place to begin, because as we discussed the other day, it's the seat of our manifesting, it's our action center, it's where we bring things into physical being. So there's lots of different ways that you can explore your Hara. Again, this is very generic without actually getting you up and swaying and knowing a little bit more about you and your journey, because that really helps to uncover where things have come from. So one of the exercises that we do inside the next step is a timeline exercise, which is incredibly powerful, where we literally kind of go back and map life events. So that's one place that you might like to begin, without asking you a whole bunch of private questions in front of everybody. Have there been significant events in your life or in your past that might have caused you to close down your Hara? And if there's nothing,
potentially, yeah, nothing like that somebody would be put in prison for.
No. But things that made you uncomfortable.
Yes, things that have made me feel very uncomfortable. Yeah.
And often it can be, I say something that simple, nobody should go through anything along those lines, but this is hugely where most people get closed down in their Hara. So if you remember when we talked about it, if you think about this part of our body, like as society, we have done it's such a part of the body that's so frequently disrespected in many ways. We're not taught about it, we're not educated about it, we're taught that it's the place, or it has a secret name, or we must always keep it private. And so there's always been this hidden energy around it. And then layered on top of that is the lack of education around self-love, or exploration, or understanding ourselves, or even how to connect with other human beings. And I think, like we said the other day, very often our first or early interactions, because we don't know and understand ourselves, and usually the other person doesn't know and understand themselves, and most demonstrations of love or sex, if children are watching it, tends to come from porn or like all kinds of other places. It's very rarely about connection. Sex has been made into, and this has been going on for hundreds of years, this isn't anything new, I think it's been amplified, but sex has just been made into this often dirty kind of perception in many places. So there are lots of reasons why we may have shut that down. So things to explore one would be a timeline exercise. Anything that you do know consciously that's happened to you, or maybe not. The other things I would start to explore, if you remember, your Hara develops between the age of 0 and 16. So it contains your base chakra, which develops for girls between the age of 0 and 7, and boys between the age of 0 and 8. So men, your chakras develop in 8-year cycles. Women, your chakras develop in 7-year cycles. This is why girls tend to mature a lot sooner than boys, because they're actually 1 year less. So they go through the sequence a lot quicker. So I would look at things that happened in your younger years whilst those first two chakras were developing. So the age of 0 to 7 and 7 to 14, or up to sort of 16. It doesn't always have to have been around sex. It can be around any sort of loss, moving schools, parents not there, feeling like your parents weren't there even though they were, friends moving away, all the kind of things that tend to happen during our younger years, or perhaps even moving around quite frequently and you don't quite get your grounding. The other things I'd potentially explore would be your time in the womb, because very often we pick a lot of this stuff up from our mum or generational patterns. There's lots of different doorways to start to explore where it comes from.
Yeah, both of those things you've just said have kind of pinged off bells in my head, so I think I know where I'm starting with it.
Yeah, and particularly generational patterns around that kind of stuff. I've had to do a lot of healing for the whole of my family on generations on both sides of patterns that have been passed down through my family of sexual trauma and abuse. Like, I absolutely know that I'm the last one. I'm not letting that happen anymore. And not necessarily that it had to get to that, but think about how women have been treated throughout the centuries. Like, there's been a general disempowerment kind of energy for a lot of women, that we have a lot of healing to do through generational patterns and family lines. I can see Sonia nodding her head away there as well. Does that make sense, Wendy, to you?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And that's the thing, generational patterns as well, just from an energy perspective, they are embedded in our kidneys. So if you could see them coming in, I always imagine them like jack plugs. If you could imagine one on the left kidney, one on the right kidney, and it's literally a big line or cable that is connecting you to all of your generations past. So if you could imagine the line of your family are still energetically connected to you, and it comes into your kidney energy, which is your Hara. So any generational patterns I always explore will tend to be in there, because they're usually based in fear, which is also connected to your kidneys. So it's like your Hara has so much work to do. Like, you're carrying generational stuff, you've got all of the stuff that you've picked up during those first 14 to 16 years, plus all the sexual experiences, which are often pretty crappy at the beginning, even if you've not been through anything particularly traumatic, plus the disempowerment, plus all of the other stuff. There's so much in our Haras for us to work on. So I hope that's given you, everyone got something to work on from that? I don't everyone's like, oh my God, I got so much to do. It's huge, and it's the place for most people. It is the place for most people. Will you share in the group, Wendy? I know you're coming on the next steps with us as well, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, I will do. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
We can definitely unpack and explore this, and your mentor will definitely be able to guide you around all of that as well. And the first weekend, the Your Soul weekend, we'll definitely be doing work on that, and fine-tuning and exploring where those things are. So the timeline exercise is definitely something we'll be doing to help you get some clarity. But thank you for asking that question, Wendy. Can we all send Wendy some love, please? Because I think that was a big aha